So I kind of ummed and ahed over tonight's session. I was going to redo one that I thought I could do better, which was on what stitches to use, and I probably will redo that. I felt it didn't really work as well as I wanted. But tonight we are going to do two things. We're going to have a look at flatlock stitch or two-thread overlock as an edging stitch because I think it's so underused and it's such a great stitch. And then we're going to move on to four-thread safety. So I know there's some of you that don't have combo machines, but I do want you just to stay with me because it may influence something along the road, or it just you can still do it. It's just that you have to do it in two so- two shots rather than one. So stay with me and hear about it because the most widely used stitch in ready-made clothes is four or five thread safety. Okay, so let us have a look and see where manufacturers use it and see if we can bring it more into our projects. Uh, I tell you, I spend so much time. If I buy an article of clothing, there's always that 15 minutes where I check how they made it. I learn a lot from looking what manufacturers do as far as stitches and things goes. So I've got a few things to show you, and I think that will help you in your choices as to what stitches to use. But I wanted to start off with two-thread flatlock. It's a stitch that is one of my favorite stitches, of course, and it's that stitch that pulls flat. So I use it a lot for decorative, but you can use it for a lot of other things than decorative. You can use it for sewing on elastic. You will use it if you're using the blind hem foot. Um, Baby's clothes, it's excellent on, and it's great for decorative techniques. So what I'm going to do is I am probably in a minute going to turn you around and show you some I did earlier. But I want to add that flat lock stitch is where we pull it flat. But if you don't pull it flat, say you're using a single piece of fabric or you're working on a double piece of fabric, but you never intend to open it out, then it is just a two-thread overlock. Okay. And it is a stitch that I like for several reasons. One, I think it's quite pretty on the edge of blankets or towels or something like that. Um, it's soft. It's because you're only using two threads. It's softer, so it does give you a nice finish. And I think it's underused in that way. And it's also the other thing about it is it's only two threads. It's only two threads, so it's a more economical stitch. Okay, so I'm going to turn. Actually, I'm probably going to double it up rather than turn it round. So let me put this one in. Um, There we go. So you can see on my machine, I have a flat lock stitch, two-thread overlock, okay? And it's actually on a single piece of fabric. So on that side, it looks like that. And on this side, it's got those nice big loopy stitches, kind of, I think, like daisy petals. So it if you use a decorative thread, you can get a nice finish with it. And as I said, it can be used on fleece or washcloths or those baby burp covers, things like that. So this one here, which I'm showing you, is just on a single piece of fabric. Okay. So let me turn it round, and here I have exactly the same stitch, right? But it's on two pieces of fabric. And if I pull on it, it is going to open up and give me those ladders. Okay. So my stitch is visible and it may not be everybody's cup of tea for a seam, but it has a lot of decorative finishes and you actually have another choice because this side can also be decorative. All right. So you could have this side as the outside seam, but the benefit is that you get this flat seam. So it's really great for children's wear or exercise wear. And I just want to show you a pair of leggings I made with that stitch, and it's the outside leg seam. It may be too close to see, is it? Whoops. So there, you see it's pretty and it pulls flat. And this is the side where you get the zigzaggy type look, and the other side is the rungs. Okay, and that's because I opened it. If I hadn't opened it, it would still look like this one. Okay, still look like this one. We put that flat so that you get a better view. We put it around that way because it looks prettier that way. So I just wanted to talk about that because I think it's underused. And as I said, it's economic and it's quick to thread up because you're only using 2 threads. But I do want to share something with you. And I think this is what puts people off using it. So we are only using 2 threads. And when we only use 2 threads, we have to use the subsidiary looper. Now that subsidiary looper pulls to the left and over to the right when I don't want it. Okay, and all it does is on the very end of it, there's a little hook and it goes into the eye of the upper looper. And all it does is fool the machine into thinking there's thread in there. Now, if you have another mate machine, um, I know on the Beninas it's called a 2-thread converter. Okay, on the Baby Locks it's called a subsidiary looper. On the Beninas it's called a 2-thread converter. And if you have an earlier model or a different mate, perhaps sometimes you actually have to put it into the machine. It's not there to flip back and forth. You actually have to put it in. The first serger I had no idea what it was. And then when I went to use it, I'd lost it. So that is the subsidiary looper. And as I said, we get a nice stitch. So I'm just going to check and see what the questions are on Flatlock. And then I'm going to move on to my next stitch. So let me just come back to there. And Sue said, is it strong enough on leggings? And yes, it is. It is strong. It is a strong stitch. It's a stretchy stitch. Um, but it's a strong stitch. And I think people sometimes worry about that. Now, if you use the narrower one, a narrow flatlock, it will be a tighter stitch. Or even if you use a 3-thread flatlock, it will be a tighter stitch. But the trouble with that is it doesn't pull as flat as I would like. But yes, I think it works very well. I tell you, I didn't show it to you on lace. Let me just turn you round and oops, I didn't mean to put you up. Turn you around and show it on lace because I think it kind of looks good on lace. So here's some lace I've attached using it. And what makes it, let me turn it around so that it's more towards you. What makes it kind of nice is that it does give a decorative finish, and of course it allows the lace to lay flat. Now that's just a narrow, so you can probably just about see it. I think I can see it. And it's firmly attached, but it's flat and it's very easy to do. So that's using a narrow flat lock. But I would certainly test and see if it's what you want. But I know some people like to do a 3-thread overlock, turn it, and then cover stitch it. Well, I'd almost prefer to use a 2-thread and then cover stitch it because you've got less thread. If you don't pull it open, it's still going to shut if you want to have a thick seam. But if you pull it open, you can stitch on top of that stitching with a decorative stitch and put a cover stitch on the top. I really need, so yes, Danny says, I really need to use Flatlock more. I'm not sure about leggings. You don't have to use it on leggings, but it is great for children's jackets or clothing for babies because it is flat and it's the only stitch that really does that. So let's have a look at the next thing I want to talk about. And this really comes from the fact, oh, I did show you the threading. I showed you the subsidiary loop. I will put these notes up. Um, so the next stitch I want to talk about is 4-thread safety and 5-thread safety. And rather like Flatlock, I don't think people use it enough. So let me show you some things. I'll probably come back to the, actually, no, I'll probably stay here. So why would I use a 4-thread safety? And no, let me start from the beginning. What machines can do a 4-thread safety? And this is another issue. Um, 4-thread safety and 5-thread safety can only be done on combo machines in one sweep. Okay, you can stitch the chain stitch and you can stitch the edge stitch all in one go on a combo machine. Now, if you have, say, an Acclaim, a Serger, and then a Euphoria, you can still do that. You can do a chain stitch and then finish it, but you're going to have to do it in two. But why would I go to a 4-thread safety? Okay. Well, as I said at the beginning, it is the most used stitch in manufactured clothes. And the advantage of a 4-thread safety is you're going to get a much nicer, more invisible seam than you would get using a 4-thread overlock. Now, are there times when I wouldn't use it? Yes, absolutely. If I'm working on a knit, but not all knits, but most knits. Say I'm making a t-shirt and it has 4-way stretch. I am going to use 4-thread overlock. It is the perfect stitch. It stretches and it recovers. When I start talking about 4-thread safety and 5-thread safety, that is a chain stitch with a finish. So the one thing we know about chain stitch is it doesn't stretch. So let me just show you some stuff. So let me move you over this way a bit. So these are some I did earlier. And you can see here, that's the back. Let me do it that way. That the red, let me do it this way around. The red is the chain stitch and the yellow, I just use that 2-thread overlock. Okay, I'm calling it overlock because I'm not opening it out and making it flat. But here you can see I've done it with the red there. And then this one, can you see the red stitch? It's kind of, it goes in with the, on this side, it's probably more visible. Now you're looking at the chain side of the stitch. So you've got chain stitch and I've got that 2-thread overlock and I have one more. And you're probably saying, why do you have 3 that look different? Well, there's a story to that too. So there you have it with the red. And as I keep saying to you, it is the most used stitch in manufactured wovens. Okay, sometimes knits, but not often. But I can't get this off the hanger. But this is the little dress I did for Everly, and I want to show you the seam on that. Now, I didn't sew the whole thing with this stitch, but I certainly sewed the side seams. And there you can see the side seams. And it just gives a much nicer finish. Do you see how invisible it is on the front? It just gives a much nicer finish. So that is 4-thread safety. I could have used 5. I just tend to use 4 more often. So what else do I have to show you? I have my a t-shirt. Okay. Now this is a classic case where I would not be able to use that stitch because it's a stretch and I'm going to use a 4-thread overlock, by far the better stitch for a knit, but there are exceptions. So I'll show you one more thing I did. This is the tunic from the Tunic Bible. And again, I sewed my side seams. I'm not sure if I sewed my sleeves. Yes, I sewed my sleeves and my side seams all with 4-thread safety, just to get that nicer seam, okay? So let me show you the exception. If you keep using that cute dress for demo, she will never get to wear it. No, no, probably not. I will give it to her. I don't know why I've still got it, except I haven't seen them. How do you secure the end of chain stitch? secure the end of, you know, it's one of those things people always say to me, chain stitch comes undone. Will you try undoing it? It comes undone from the end that you come off. Okay. It's rare for it to come undone the other end unless it didn't take a stitch in the first place. So what I do with chain stitch is I just make sure I sew over that stitch. So in the case of this tunic, when I sewed off the end, I still have my binding to put on here. Actually, I might have done the binding first. Let's have a look and see because I can never remember. No, I just secured it. So what I did was I cut it and I tied the ends together. Okay. I tied the ends of the chain together. So 2 threads tied together. Do you think a 4th thread safety would work on something like a scrunchie where it has elastic in it, but it's gathered so it isn't going to stretch out completely? Well, interestingly enough, the scrunchie will only stretch as much as the fabric, won't it? So yes, you actually could use it for that because it will only stretch as much as the fabric. So let me show you the big exception because I think it helps to understand this. So I have here a jean jacket with spandex, and it stretches across, but it doesn't stretch down because it's two-way stretch. Now that's quite common on a lot of knits, even t-shirt knits. Okay, so how did they do this jacket? Well, let me tell you, on the side seams, they used either 4 or 5 thread safety. I think 4. So let me put you under this. It's difficult to get this whole jacket in front of this thing, but let's have a look. Okay, so you can see here that there is a chain stitch and there is the finishing stitch. Can you see that? Now this does not stretch, but that's fine because this jacket doesn't stretch lengthwise, it only stretches across. So whenever they were sewing down, they could actually use a 4 thread safety with no stretch or 5 thread safety with no stretch. But let's look at this seam up here, which is the back of the yoke, and it does stretch. See that? So how did they finish that? That they overlocked the edge. Okay, they overlocked the edge, and then they used a cover stitch to sew on top. And cover stitch does have stretch. Chain stitch doesn't. Okay. Somebody said, would you use a fray block when instead of tying off the threads? I might on some things, probably on clothing that might take a bit of wear and tear. I would probably tie them off. You could certainly dab it afterwards, but yeah. It's nice. I'm not much of a ruffly girl, but I'd wear that tunic and then yeah, nanosecond. Yeah, you know, I tell you, think dramatic. Think dramatic next as you get older. Think bright colors. Okay. I always think the Queen of England before she died. I always loved the fact that as she got older, she wore these really strong neon colors and really bright stuff. And I think it looked fabulous on her. And I think necklines, fancy necklines, are always great on us. And yes, I do like that ruffly neckline. So yes. Okay, so somebody's coming on and I'll explain this because it's a really good point. Would a ½ inch seam be adequate for 4 thread safety? So let me just explain. I have here, and this is kind of cool. Let me put these on my machine. So this one is where I sewed using chain needle 1. Now that's the one to the far left. Okay, so it's the biggest distance from the edge. And that actually comes out to a perfect 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, using the chain 1 needle. So this one, I used the chain 2 needle, and this came out to a perfect 1/2 inch. Okay. And the last one, I used the chain 3 needle, which is the one right next to the surgeon needles, and it came out 3/8 of an inch. Okay, so that's kind of cool. And if I was doing a 5/8 seam allowance, then I would just run the raw edges kissing my knife, and I would have the perfect 5/8 of an inch seam. So that is worth mentioning, I think. So let us have a quick look at how I thread up for it, because I think that can be confusing too. So I'm going to turn you around to the machine, and I'm just going to add in the chain, okay? So let me just I have to take the camera back a bit because otherwise you won't see it. And I'm actually going to, oh, I don't know if I can do the whole thing without taking you onto that. So I'm just worried you still got sound. I think you have. I think you have. Shout up if you haven't got sound. So here is my machine, and it is all set for my 2-thread flatlock, my 2-thread overlock, okay? And all I'm going to do is add in the, my width setting is 7.5, yes. So all I'm going to do is add in my chain needle. So I'm going to put my thread on my chain looper. I'm going to go up through the aerial arm. I know you can't see all this. And I'm going to thread my chain looper correctly. Whoops, I've still got my old thread in there, right. So what do we want? Do we want 3/8 or 1/2 an inch or 5/8? Right, it's in there. So now I've got to put my needle in. So I think you can see me doing that. So I'm going to use I always have to put my foot down, otherwise I can't get my fat fingers in there. So I'm going to, so if you ever lose your Allen key, this is the perfect um, tool. It's Swiss Tools PB8205L, and it says 1.5 by 100. And I'll post that in the comments on the thing. Only I find it easier to use than the little Allen key. So I'm going to thread up that needle. So I'm using the chain 3 needle. So I'm put it on the chain 3 spool up through the chain 3. I'm going to lift you up a bit so you can see this. Note, I'm going to get my light if I'm not careful. Note, I am still sitting. I have my foot up. I'm going to put it into the slot for the chain 3 needle. And I didn't stand up and do a double somersault over the machine. Okay, if you do a class with me, I don't let you stand up. Right. So I could use my automatic threader, but I haven't got my tube shut, so I'm just going to thread it. Right, so that is it. I have it threaded. And I think this is the bit that confuses people. I still need my knife up and cutting, okay, because I'm still doing a serger stitch. And whatever stitch length I have for my serger stitch is going to be the length of my chain stitch, okay? So let me grab a piece of fabric. So I'm going to start off. I'm going to actually stitch with my fabric next to the knife just to show you. So this is the 3/8 wide, and because I've got the edge against the knife, that's how much fabric I'm using of my seam allowance. So pretty cool. So I'm going to come off. Right. Now, say we were going to finish this. This is the end that could come undone. Let me just cut that because I kind of came off it ugly. But this chain section here, I would thread that under the yellow stitches of the Flatlock, and I would tie off these 2 threads, even if it meant putting one through. I didn't start stitching at the beginning. And the reason for that was I hadn't created a thread chain. If I started again, it'd start again, and I can probably show you better. I have a thread chain now, so that's going to lock it on at that end. So here you go. This is prettier. This doesn't have a mess at the end. So here's the yellow. I would thread that into the yellow, and this one I would tie it off or thread it in with the yellow even. If my threads were separate, if they were single, I would tie them. They're actually all tied together. But most of the time when you're going to be using this stitch, say it's the end of a dress or something, you're going to be putting a hem up there. So I would just tuck it in and do my hem, and that would certainly secure it. Remember, it's only going to easily come undone this end. Can you do the stitch in the round? Yes, absolutely you can. You certainly can. So let me remove that. Yes, you can absolutely do it in the round. So width setting is 7.5. In the cover stitch and chain already locked in at the beginning, or do you have to do both ends? You know, I, I get people are concerned about this, and I think it's a lot of the conversation that people have about chain stitch coming undone, but most of the time it won't come undone at the start. It will only come undone. Sorry, I'm trying to put up a question. It will only come undone at the end, and 9 times out of 10, or even 10 times out of 10, you're going to sew a hem or put a binding on or something that's going to secure down that stitch. So I wouldn't overly worry about it. Somebody said, "Do you need to use the subsidiary looper?" Yes, I do, because I'm still set for 2-thread overlock, and I've added in a chain to make it a 4-thread safety. I have 4 threads on my machine. If I wanted 5-thread safety, I would just have taken my subsidiary looper off and done a 3-thread overlock. Okay. In that case, I wouldn't need the subsidiary looper. I only need the subsidiary looper because I'm using 2 threads. Think 2-thread converter. Think what the subsidiary looper does.